But Troilus, who though the youngest of Priam's sons, equalled Hector in bravery, urged them to war and told them not to be frightened by Helenus' fearful words. And so they unanimously decided to ready the fleet and set out for Greece. Priam sent Alexander and Deiphobus into Paeonia to raise an army they called the people to assembly. Having arranged a line of command beginning with his older and ending with his younger sons, he told how the Greeks had wronged the Trojans. He had sent Antenor as an envoy to Greece to regain his sister Hesione and obtain reparations for the Trojans. But the Greeks had treated Antenor scornfully and sent him home empty-handed. For this reason, he had decided to send Alexander with a fleet against Greece. Thus, Alexander would avenge the death of his grandfather and the other wrongs that the Trojans had suffered. Then Priam ordered Antenor to tell how he had been treated in Greece. Antenor briefly described his mission and, urging the Trojans to have no fear, made them more eager for war against Greece. Then Priam asked for others' opinions. Would anyone like to speak out against war? He asked. Thereupon Panthus, addressing himself to the king and his party, told that he had heard from his father Euphorbus, if Alexander brought home a wife from Greece, Troy would utterly fall. It was much better, he said, to spend one's life in peace than to risk the loss of liberty in war. Smart advice, but sometimes war is necessary. Panthus' speech won the contempt of the people, and they asked the king what had to be done. When he had told them that they must build ships to go against Greece and gather supplies for the army, they cried out that they were ready to obey any order he gave them. For this he thanked them profusely, and then dismissed the assembly. Unquote. Upon studying this passage, we can see Hector thought the Greeks had no fleet, since he also feared the Greeks would rely on warlike Europeans as allies, which could be significant as we come into this stuff more detailed in the future. He also makes reference to a Mount Ida and the woodland there in which he dreamt whilst resting on a hunt, in where Alexander or Paris chooses the goddess Venus or Aphrodite to be the most beautiful goddess, similar to the Homeric version, only here the action of doing so takes place in a dream as opposed to a literal interaction. The Ida Hills, situated around 20 miles to the west of Troy in Cambridge, actually it's to the southeast, I made a typo there, it's to the east and to the southeast in Cambridge, are clearly there, containing springs and woodlands, which you'd think would be fit for hunting and having a little nap. The water of which feeds into the river Ouse, which also, remember, there's supposed to be several rivers that feed into the Scamander, or otherwise the Ouse. After looking around out of interest, I found a Mount Ida to the northwest of Troy, in Cambridgeshire that is, in the southern Cumbrian mountains of England, which also happens to have a great number of woodlands in the vicinity, with the word lunar, a possible etymologically older word of lunar, referenced on maps. Could this be a location wherein Alexander dreamt? So again, we've got the Ida Hills, like to the southeast of Troy in Cambridgeshire, or the Gog Magog Hills as we'll come on to in later videos. And then if you come up northwest, you've got the area there where you've got Mount Ida, and you've got a number of woodlands and references to lunar. Now in this book here, in this one by Wilson and Blackett, in that book somewhere he makes reference to the fact that Laurentians, or the older English before England and Brutus and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of moon worshipping that took place in and around these areas in England, Excuse me. So the correlation is fascinating, and I think we might circle back to this in a future video with more information. There is also a Mount Ida in Anatolia, around 70 kilometers away from the ruins to the southeast of Hisarlik. Whilst Mount Ida is closer to Ilium in Turkey than the Mount Ida of England, not the Ida Hills, the two mountains, as I say, this area of Anatolia is very arid, even by today's standards, when we're supposed to have a lot cooler climates than it was back then. The soil is still sandy, you know, it's very arid rather than nice, lush, fertile plains as described by Homer in the Iliad. It is claimed also that Zeus took the side of the Trojans and observed the battles from a position on Ida. Now unfortunately it doesn't say Mount Ida or the hills of Ida, so that's why I've put all three of those in this video, because we've got two Mount Idas, one in England, one in Turkey, but we've got the Ida Hills, which are relatively close, which have springs, which is also referenced in the geography of the Iliad and the Ilium, should I say. And to be honest guys, that takes us to the end of this video. Now, I apologize, going through that video there, I was tongue twisting left, right and centre. But the main focus of this video was literally to just start. We just needed to start. I needed to get some general information out there, give you some information on the characters, who was at play. I mean, there's so many more characters that are going to come into play, you know, like your Ajaxes and things like that. There's two Ajaxes, where they came from, the locations, places like Crete, any of the other locations. We are going to discuss them all further in the future. Hisarlik, and as I just mentioned a few moments ago, the Gog Magog Hills. These are two very different locations geographically, and like the areas all around them, like the things that are there, the trees, the plant life, the springs, the rivers, all this kind of stuff. So we've got all that to touch on. We've got a lot more breaking down to do, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.